Ready to lead us off, done?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. What up, everybody? This your boy Dunn the Kingpin. Welcome to the Kingpin Talks podcast. Woo, 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 woo. This your boy Dunn the Kingpin, my co-host Nate, and we have a very special guest for y'all tonight. None other than our good friend, our good brother, Michael R. Thomas. Welcome to the channel, my brother. How you feeling tonight?
How y'all doing, fellas? Like I told Nate off the air so many times before, I've been following you guys for a while, showing some support. It's been a couple of times I've been in the comments while y'all been going live, but I've been keeping up. I've been keeping tabs on y'all for a while. I'm excited and grateful for the opportunity to be on y'all show tonight.
Oh man, well we appreciate that, Mike. Appreciate that. Appreciate the support, not only for you but from everybody else, man. We're glad that this channel is going to places that we didn't even expect for it to go, man. So we just excited on tonight. Oh yeah, how you feeling, Nate?
Hey man, ready to talk some ready to show this change up that we about to do for everybody. Like we have done so many shows as far as inspirational, so y'all get a chance to see what we really do off
Right,
air.
right.
And that is running this sports thing. So hey man, y'all get ready to enjoy this show, man, because if y'all know us, you know about to talk some good college football.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And on that same line, man, we know all that this channel we mainly be talking about, like Nate said, inspirational stuff. On tonight, we just gonna take the leash off. And yeah, we miss you too, bro. We miss you too, man. We excited as well, man. It's from the beginning that we want to do this show, it seemed like all type of stuff was just happening, unexpected stuff and all and things that nature. But we push, we press. That's what we do. We persevere, and we strive to give the people what they want. Man, we feel like that. This channel tonight, this show on tonight is what the people want, because we're gonna hit y'all with a whole lot of topics on tonight. And I'm just gonna turn it over to Nate so he can kick this thing off.
All right, so yeah, we were decided that we were going to talk about the college football playoffs, and the first game that we're going to probably tap into, of course, if you all know me, I'm a big time Georgia Bulldogs fan. So the first game we're talking about is Ohio State and UGA. That's going to be the game in Atlanta. I guess they want me to go first as I'm a Bulldog fan. If you know me, those guys know me very, very well. This is the game I was dreading way back in August, because I said all year long we're going to go undefeated, make it to the playoffs, but this was our biggest threat other than Alabama. This is what I said going into the season. And to me, this is going to be a good test for the Georgia Bulldogs, because me personally, everyone is talking about how good the Bulldogs are defensively. They're still as stout as they were last year. However, the one concern that I have is how our secondary matches up with Marvin Harrison Jr., with Bullka. I guess if I say this name wrong, y'all apologize. I'm bad on names.
You were
But
close.
again, Georgia is Georgia. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think both teams are sort of matched. I just think the one thing that is going to be a problem for Ohio State is Georgia is just as physical as Michigan was, the team that they lost to by 20 plus a couple weeks ago. As far as the offensive line, Georgia don't give up a lot of sacks. They run the ball effectively. Yes, Ohio State is a very solid unit, but I think that could be the difference in the game. But really, I think it's going to be a good game. Let me hit this comment real quick. You are not beating us by 10 points. If you win, it's going to be by 3. We're going to get it out of the way, Tevin. Anyways,
No way. I don't see 10
yeah,
points.
I think that this is going to be a really good matchup. If you're asking me right now, the line is 6.5 Georgia. I can see it being anywhere within that range. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I have too much respect for Ohio State to think that Georgia's going to blow them out, because, again, that's a really stout group over there with C.J. Stroud. He's going to probably be a top 3 pick in the draft. Their receivers are going to go first round next year. Of course, Jackson Smith's not going to be playing this game. I kind of hate that, because I really want to see him. But we'll see. It's going to be a good matchup, though. I'm looking forward to it. What do you guys think about that game?
You can go first, Michael, if you want.
I'm expecting I'm really not excited as this game about as other people are. I don't think this is not a good matchup for Ohio State. They have a few players that have opted out for injury reasons. Trevion Henderson, the star running back, he's not playing in this game. I know the label on Georgia is this is not the same Georgia team as last year. Obviously, they had one of the historic defenses of all time last year, and it's showing in the NFL. So it backs up the numbers they put up. But this defense is still very talented. They're still going to have several high-rated first-round picks that are going to get drafted this year and beyond. And I'm going to make it clear I'm an Alabama fan. So I know what Georgia is going through this year. They're going through something called expectations. Once you climb up that mountain and you show that you are the cream of the crop and you are the best team in the nation, people expect you to come in each week and beat somebody by 40, 45 points and dominate every game. That's not how it goes. There's been several seasons where Alabama has lost a game and still made it to the mountaintop as the best team in college football. And I think that's just what Georgia's going through this year. I think Georgia could be every bit as good as last year's team. They're definitely better offensively, in my opinion. They're more well-rounded. They have more weapons. They're more dangerous. I think last year the scheme on Georgia was if you can force Stetson Bennett to throw the ball, get into a shootout, you can win the game. But the thing about that, Stetson is a guy, he's what they call a game manager, but he has the ability to take over the game, which is why, whether some people agree with it or not, he was invited to New York for the Heisman show because he can make plays. I believe that if the game is on the line and he has 2 or 3 minutes left on the clock and the ball is in his hands, the defense has done their job, they got to stop, and he has to go down the field and he has to make some plays. He can make it with his arm. He can make it with his feet. He can make it with his mind. He's a very smart player. He's savvy. But to my initial statement, I don't think this is a good matchup for Ohio State. I honestly don't believe they should be in this game. And I think Georgia's going to prove my assessment by the final score. I'm not going to get into final scores right now, but I think Georgia has the ability to dominate this game. Quite frankly, I think this will be the point differential will be higher in this game than the other game.
And I agree with everything that Mike said. Not only because I myself are an Alabama fan on Roll Tide, by the way. But just because I feel like Georgia is the more physical team than Ohio State. When you look at Georgia, their front seven is just as physical as anybody out there. Carter, number 88, he's a force to be reckoned with. I feel like the Ohio State offensive line is going to have a very tough time dealing with not only him but their defense. So I don't see where Ohio State's running game is going to be in as effective as any other game this year. If you look at even Ohio State's game versus Michigan, how did Michigan beat the brakes off of Ohio State? They ran the football. Michigan realized that even though, yes, Ohio State has a decent secondary, they can be had. And the way that they can be had is by running the football. So, and my thing is Georgia's running game is much better than Michigan's running game. So if Michigan was able to beat Ohio State by 22 points simply by running the football, what you think Georgia's going to do? And just as what Mike said that Stetson Bennett is a game manager. You know why? Because that's all that's expected of him. That's all he has to do is manage the game. He don't have to go out there and throw 300 yards. You know, the offense is not predicated on him. It's predicated on running the football. Because Stetson Bennett reminds me of Tua. And nobody expected Tua to throw for 300 yards because he had the weapons around him to be successful. Stetson realized that he has weapons around him. Not only does he have weapons on offense, but he also got weapons on defense that's able to back him up. So nobody is expecting him to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. He doesn't have to do that. because Georgia got more than enough ammo to be able to beat Ohio State. And I'm not going to get into the final score, but I am picking Georgia to beat this game. I feel like that this is going to be the most competitive game in the college football playoff, because I don't think that other game is going to be competitive. And I'll get into that. I'll get into those reasons later on in the show. But I do feel like this is going to be the most competitive game in the playoff. Just like Mike said, I do not feel like Ohio State has any business in this playoff game, and Georgia is going to show them why. But it is what it is. So I feel like that Georgia is going to very well cover that 6.5 point those 6.5 points very favorably. I don't feel like this is going to be a close game. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. I feel like Georgia is able to beat Ohio State by more than a touchdown. I do feel like they're able to beat Ohio State by more than a touchdown. So CJ Stroud is great, but I don't feel like in this situation even his greatness is going to be able to overcome the defense of Georgia. And I will say this: if there's one area where um Ohio State can take advantage of the Georgia defense is in the passing game. Because I feel like the receivers that Ohio State has, we know with Harrison Jr. and Ibukie, whatever his name is, I don't know how to say his last name. Um, I feel like those two is going to be a handful for Georgia secondary. So Georgia is going to have to put pressure on Ohio State, which I feel like they can. They're going to have to make sure that Stroud doesn't have enough time in the pocket to be able to throw the football deep, because we know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a deep threat. Ibukie is a deep threat. So in order for Stroud to be able to throw them the football, he has to have time. And I feel like Georgia has the line and the defense to be able to speed that clock up a little bit. So if there's one area where Ohio State can pretty much take advantage of as far as Georgia defense goes, I feel like it's in the passing game. But with all that said, I feel like Georgia is still the better team. I'm picking them to win, and I'm picking them to repeat. That's just my opinion. That's my pick. So that's all I got to say about that, Nate.
Okay, let me go back because I see some of the comments been jumping on y'all last couple of comments. Okay, Antoine, he's a Michigan fan. He said Georgia rush game is what? Hey, let me go ahead and get this out the way real quick, Twan, because I'm gonna go ahead and do it. All right, Michigan fan, what happened last season with Aiden Hutchinson with Ojabo? Let's not do that. Michigan is a really good rushing attack. Don't get me wrong, but Georgia's averaging 207 yards on the ground per game running the ball. Let's not do this right now. Tevin also said that a lot of Ohio State hate in here. Michigan is top 3 running ball. How is Georgia better than Georgia? Let's not go there. Let's not do it. Georgia might be throwing the ball a lot more this year because you actually see Todd Monaghan getting the guys throwing the ball a little bit more with Stetson. But let's not act like Georgia can't pound the ground. Nobody on the ground now. We're not going to do that. So those guys have very valid points now. And I'm not just saying this as a Georgia fan. But again, just like we said at the start, Georgia is just as physical as Michigan. Go ahead, Mike.
Let me add this. Georgia has 3 running backs that average over 550 yards per game. So what does that mean? It's fourth quarter. It's crunch time. Defense has been on the field for, let's say, 26, 27 minutes. Georgia rotating running backs. And they got Branson Robinson, I believe. That's really 4 guys that they can rotate in and out. That defensive line is going to get tired. If Georgia commits to the run and they pound in that ball, and you have that humongous tight ends with that offensive line, come on. I don't think anybody is disrespecting or overlooking anybody else, but you have to give credit where credit is due. Georgia does what they need to do to win the game. They can pass the ball, they can play a defensive stalemate, or they can run the ball. When you're the best team in the country, you can do what you want to do. You can styles predict fights. If Georgia wants to run the ball, they will run the ball.
And let me go ahead and say this right here. we have 18 national championships. There is nothing about Ohio State that I can hate on because, like, come on, y'all. I mean, the reason why y'all don't forget y'all won loss. This is all I'm saying. Michigan beat y'all by running the ball. What is Georgia's specialty? Running the football. So there is no hate going on. You know, if there was hate going on, I would have said Ohio State has no chance of winning this game. I said the only advantage that they have is in the passing game. If they can exploit the passing game, then maybe they'll have a shot. I'm just picking Georgia because I feel like out of the two, they're the best team. So it's no hate going on. I mean, you like you know, Nate and Mike been saying, like, nobody's overlooking Ohio State. You know, we're just looking at both teams and we're saying, okay, this team is building this team and this, you know, this team is building, that team is doing that. You know, we're analyzing both teams. And I feel like, you know, when you get to the nitty-gritty of it, Georgia's the better team out of those two teams. So there's no hate going on. I have none against Ohio State. I mean, personally, I feel like y'all don't have no business in the playoff. I mean, that's the only thing I would say. But other than that, I don't have nothing to hate on.
Okay, hey, the guy spoke. Oh, he was talking about Marvin Harrison. This is the guy I'm very concerned about. I'm concerned about that Keely Ringo Marvin Harrison matchup. That's one of the things that I came in like the guys have been saying. I have a major concern for our secondary going against those receivers. And I think that's what gives a legitimate shot for Ohio State to pull off the dub. But again, I just think that Georgia's going to have enough to overcome that outstanding attack. And then another thing is, just to show us some of the comments real quick. The other thing for Ohio State is which CJ Stroud shows up. Does CJ Stroud comes out the gate swinging? Or does the CJ Stroud that came out against Northwestern and who else they had a close game with Maryland, those games, do that CJ Stroud show up? Because again, I respect Ohio State a lot, but at the same time, I just feel like they don't have enough right now. And I think the Trevion Henderson loss is going to be big for him. I think Jackson Smith was one of the most frightening receivers in the country. Not having him is going to be huge for Ohio State. I just don't know if they have enough. And then I know a lot of people talk about it. Let me get this out the way too, because there's some people that said that Georgia's getting a favorable advantage with it being at Mercedes-Benz. We don't make the schedule. They picked this 5 years ago for the game to be in Atlanta. You were saying the same thing when Alabama was staying in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, playing in the college football playoffs. So we do not pick where we play at. The committee picks this years in advance. Please stop saying the Bulldogs. They gave the Bulldogs that advantage because they're in Atlanta. First of all, Athens in Atlanta is an hour and 45 minutes away. Let's get that out of the way too. If you live in Georgia, you know the difference between those two. Mm-hmm. So again, I had to get all that out the way. And let's see, go to the company, no matter which one, CJ, not him. Hey man, don't tell that. But I think that Ohio State, the crazy thing about it is Ohio State, when they're on, they're the best team in the country, in my personal opinion, but they have not been on all year. To me, the best team in the country is in Athens right now. So it's gonna be hard for them going into that matchup with Georgia in Atlanta. They can pull that off. They may very well win the whole thing. That's just God honest truth. And let me see one more comment. Dawson's got lucky with selection. It used to happen to USC. That is so true. USC used to get that kind of advantage back at the Rose Bowl, back in them Liner and Reggie Bush days too.
Yep. In Pasadena, yep.
Oh yes, they had plenty of games out there. Okay, we talked enough about Ohio State and Georgia. Let's get ready to hit the other game. This game, TCU and Michigan. Oh man, I'm just gonna keep it a little brief. TCU. Do you deserve to be there? Yes or no? Yes, because you was the third last team left undefeated, so you had to kind of get in by default. Let's just be honest about that thing. But also, you got a top 10 receiver in Quentin Johnston. You got a ball in Max Duggan. but I don't see any way in the world this team is going to keep up with Michigan. Michigan is still stout. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Blake Corum is out for the season. Donovan Edwards is just as good as Blake Corum, in my personal opinion. To me, Blake Corum would have won the Heisman if he didn't get hurt. But Donovan Edwards is a lot shiftier than them. I think that Michigan has established their what I'm trying to say, not dominance, their identity. They got their identity set last year. And I think they built off it again this year. And I think it's just going to be too much for TCU. I think TCU might be in the Cincinnati position last year against Alabama. It's cool to see you here, but you don't have enough to be here. So it might be one of those things where, congratulations, you popped up in the playoffs, but you really don't deserve to be here because of a down year for Alabama and Clemson, and that team need to carry their goalposts back in Knoxville. Them teams like that could have been there in your spot. So, again, I don't see this being much of a game. I think Michigan's going to win handily, and I'll turn it over to the guys.
Let me go ahead and get this out the way right now because I've been saving this for weeks now, and I've been getting accused of being salty and mad and all this type of stuff. Look, like I said before, I say it again. We got 18 national championships. I'm not mad. I mean, down years happen to anybody, and like I've been saying, we've been sitting on the mountaintop for so long. Somebody was bound to catch up to us, and I'm not mad at that. So, my thing is this: when we lost to Tennessee, we dropped. When Ohio State lost to Michigan, they dropped. Even though Georgia, won against Missouri, that game was close. They dropped. USC, Clemson, LSU, Tennessee, all these teams lose, they drop. TCU lost in the Big 12 championship. Why didn't they drop? That's my question right there. Why did they not drop? Because of formality, like you were saying, Nate. Because they had one loss. Nobody did not want to see a 2-loss Alabama team in the playoff. Oh, they got 2 losses. Oh, well, you can't let them in. Okay, that's fine. But I want you to know this game is going to be a snooze fest. I think right now, Michigan is an 8-point favorite. It's going to be more than that. It's going to be more than 8 points. Michigan they're just more physical than TCU. Let's get that straight. Do TCU deserve to be in this playoff? Yes, they do. Are they one of the 4 best teams in the country? No, they're not. We know that that other 4th team relies on Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Now I'm gonna say it right here. But y'all let TCU up in here. That's all. That's cool and all. But just know that it's gonna be a snooze fest. I don't see TCU. With all seriousness, all trolling aside, I don't see TCU being of a matchup to Michigan. Michigan got the better. They got the better team. Even with Corum being out, Edwards, like Nate said, or Edwards is just as good. Michigan can run the football. Just looking at TCU and how they played versus Kansas State in that championship game, their defense is decent. It's average. I mean, it's the Big 12. Like, come on. So, I don't see this being a close game whatsoever. I would be surprised if this game is won by 10 points. I see Michigan lining up TCU. They're going to bring TCU back down to reality. When I look at TCU, their last year Cincinnati, the media try to hype up Cincinnati like they were just this great, awesome team. Oh, look at this person. Oh my God, look at Cincinnati. And look what happened to them when they met us. Just because you deserve to be there doesn't mean that you're a great team. And that's going to happen to TCU this year. So I got Michigan winning this game handily. Michigan's run game is just as phenomenal as I would say almost as phenomenal as Georgia. Michigan do have a great running game. I just feel like they're way better than TCU. They way better than TCU. This is going to be the least watched game of the playoff. You know, everybody want TCU to just go on the Cinderella run and win the whole thing. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. So that's all I got to say about TCU and Michigan. I know I made a short story long, but I just had to get that out the way. And Mike, you can go ahead and take it away.
This is a very interesting game because it can go. There's so many layers. You can make the argument that TCU should have lost multiple games. That Baylor game where they ran the kicking unit on at the last minute. You know, Baylor kind of laid the egg because that was a game Baylor should have won. But then on the flip side, Michigan that same week, because they were saying Alabama needed chaos the last 3 weeks, and Michigan should have lost as well. So I feel like this is a game where you could predict the blowout or you could predict a game that could come down to the wire. The key to this game is going to be Max Duggan and Quentin Johnson for TCU. Those two could keep TCU into this game. But on the flip side, how is the TCU offensive line going to hold up against the front seven for Michigan? And who's going to guard Quentin Johnson? I believe the Georgia boy from DJ Turner could give him some issues because Quentin Johnson is 6'4", and he runs a 4.3, I believe. DJ Turner, he's not as tall, so that could be an issue as well. I think he's like 6'1-ish, 6'4", 6'1". He's 6'1", and Quentin Johnson's 6'4", but DJ Turner, his measurables, he runs a 4.28. We know how, colleges, their guns are a little bit faster. But as far as a speed aspect, he matches up well with Quentin Johnson. As far as a physicality aspect, I don't know if Michigan has anybody that can match it up. And I've seen personally that if you have one dominant receiver, he can take over a game. Think about the guy from I forgot where he's from. He's from Central Phoenix City, Alabama. He played for Clemson when they had Trevor Lawrence. He was a freshman by the name of Justin Ross. Now, injuries have kind of derailed his career, but he single-handedly wrecked a very solid Alabama secondary that had the likes of Diggs or Patrick Surtain Jr. He wrecked that defense, that secondary. So if Max Duggan and Quentin Johnson can kind of develop some type of magic against Michigan and exploit that secondary, if the TCU offensive line can hold up, they can make it interesting because dominant receiver, especially at the college level, we see what they can do at the NFL. But at the college level, a dominant receiver can take over the entire game. But on the flip side, I think that J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback from Michigan, has the potential to be the number one overall quarterback in the draft whenever he declares for the draft one day. That guy, he's got an arm, and I believe they would have been better off him being QB1 last year. But I think him being a freshman and trying to learn the offense and just trying to figure himself out as a quarterback, that kind of handicapped himself. But as you see, the backup quarterback transferred. It's all on him now. And I really do think that he's gonna be a franchise quarterback in the NFL one day. And he's shown flashes of that this year. He doesn't really make too many mistakes as far as throwing into double coverage. He's really good at looking off the safety. He's really good at not throwing in double coverage, like I said a minute ago. But I think this Michigan team rivals Georgia as tit for tat as having one of the more talented teams in college football. And that's crazy to me because Jim Harbaugh, he interviewed for NFL coaching jobs last year, and everybody was like, "What's going to go on with Michigan? How are the players going to respond, knowing that that coach wanted it out? He wanted to test the waters in the NFL, but he didn't really like what he saw. He didn't like the potential openings that were available at that time. And once you know that your coach is kind of testing the waters elsewhere, it can kind of shake up a locker room. It didn't shake up this team. Wire to wire, they had some close games, but this Michigan team was as dominant as Georgia, just as dominant, if not more dominant at times this season. And I think that's going to be an issue for TCU because although TCU they've been in those close games as well, you hear it in basketball terms a lot. You heard it with Michael Jordan and the Bad Boy Pistons. Michael Jordan was the most talented player out of both of those teams at the time, but the Pistons had been to the mountaintop. They had that experience. Michael Jordan had to take his lumps. Most teams, most high-level players have to take their lumps. TCU has not been on this stage. Just like Cincinnati and Desmond Ridder had not been on that stage last year, like you just mentioned a while ago. Can they rise to the occasion and play over their heads for 60 minutes against a team that arguably is the most talented team in college football? I don't know. But I think the key is going to be the line of scrimmage. Can the offensive line hold up long enough to give Max Duggan and Quentin Johnson enough time to do their magic? We already know Max Duggan he's a fighter. He's going to get hit. He's going to get hit several times, but he's going to get back up. But if the offensive line does not do a better job of protecting him, it could get ugly. But I'm not predicting an ugly game. I do think Quentin Johnson, he's been on my mind for several months because I think he's going to be the next big thing as far as receivers in the NFL. And I think he could take over this game, but that offensive line has to hold up enough to give Max Duggan enough time to connect with him. If they do, it's going to be some fireworks. It's going to be a good game.
Hey, Mike, which receiver currently do he remind you of? I'm gonna ask Don that question too. But I want to ask you, what current receiver do he put you in mind of? I'm gonna see if y'all thinking like me. I'm gonna say my person last. But he remind me of somebody that you real familiar with.
We talking about current players or
current players? Now let me see if you kind of see where I'm going with this, but Quentin Johnson he reminds me of somebody that was dominating this league for a while.
He kind of reminds me of I don't want to disrespect him because he's not the same size, but he kind of reminds me of a combination of Julio as far as the physicality and maybe a Terrell Owens. He has that top end speed like a T.O. and Julio at times, and he has that physicality that he can high reach balls and catch balls where a cornerback just can't get to. I just think he has that kind of flavor that makes sense.
I was right on that line. I was gonna say Julio. He reminded me of Julio, and me and Mike has had a chance to see Julio up close and personal for many years. And Julio could meet you at the top when healthy. When Julio was healthy, he could meet you at the top. And so that's who Quentin Johnson reminds me of. Reminds me of a Julio prototype. For a second I was gonna say Mike Williams, because Mike Williams do have that same physicality. He can go out and he can win the high balls as well. But Quentin Johnson reminds me of Julio, prototype.
Y'all was right on the money. That's exactly who I been saying for months, that's baby Julio. Because I got a chance to really watch him over the last couple of weeks. And I'm like, man, that man remind me of young Julio. And like you said, Mike, they could keep the game close because I think Quentin just might cut up, because at the end of the day, everybody knows he's a projected top 10 pick. I'm going to be excited to watch and see what happens with that. And another thing I know both of y'all are probably feeling, Max Duggan need to have a decent game NFL wise, because he's already declared for the draft. And KJ stayed back, Bo Nix stayed back, although I don't think Bo Nix will work in the NFL or for another day. There's a couple of quarterbacks that was supposed to come out this year that decided to stay back for 24. So this could be an opportunity for him to fly up the board. But y'all, that's been the TCU Michigan conversation. We're about to jump into something else. Not wait to get these guys' opinion on this. Do you guys feel that the 4 best teams made the playoffs? Do y'all want me to go first, or do y'all want to answer that one first?
You can go first, Nate.
Okay. I'm gonna say three of the four reasonable resumes got in. To me, there was only two set teams, in my personal opinion, that deserved two of the four. Everybody else had an argument for them. Because if we're gonna put it like this, and everyone, I know that it was all cracking jokes about, man, y'all talking about Alabama sneaking in. Let me put it to you like this. Alabama couldn't help that the rest of the country decided to goof up in the last 3 to 4 weeks to put them back in that position. Tennessee, as I said for weeks, need to carry that goalpost out the river and take it back to the stadium, because after the Georgia game, they was already frauds. It did. It got smoked by South Carolina and Spencer Rattler.
Yep.
Clemson had the back door into the playoffs and lost to that same South Carolina team that he had just laughed at Tennessee fans about the previous week. USC was in. Ohio State was out. Because being real, yes, Ohio State lost one game, but losing by 20 plus at home to Michigan was going to be their undoing. And then USC decided to go out there and get smoked by Utah. So when you look at the situation, TCU benefited off of 5 and on down, having 2 or more losses or having a bad loss down the stretch. In Ohio State, it was just like, well, they got 1 loss. So we're just going to put them in here. Although, if we're going to be technical, Bama lost by a combined 4 points. But then, the one thing I think that kind of hurt Alabama, this is my personal opinion. If LSU only lost to Georgia, they would have been straight. Had they not lost that Texas A&M game, I think that conversation would have been a little more interesting for that last spot. But I think that LSU lost to Texas A&M, who was, by the way, terrible this year, had the number 1 recruiting class for nothing. I'm sure half of that crew is going to go take their NIL money and go somewhere else. But that loss actually hurt, because this was an LSU team who showed up and won a gutsy game in Death Valley, but then they fell off after that. And then, of course, Georgia hung a 50 burger in the SEC title game. So it kind of just, that loss kind of, that third, to me, they could have got away with losing to Georgia had they not lost to Texas A&M. And that might have favored Alabama a little bit more, because the Tennessee loss was understandable, because Tennessee was that's a 3-point loss. That's a 3-point loss. You lost on an unfortunate pass interference where they got a field goal and got out of there with a lucky win. You could have got away with that. But again, that's the thing with that. But Ohio State fell into the case of, we got 1 loss. I promise you, if Clemson would have finished with 1 loss, Clemson would have been over Ohio State. So that's where I stand on it. I think 2 of the 4 truly deserve to be there. TCU was one of the, like Kendall, I think that was Kendall that's on YouTube, said they lost at the right time. They lost at the right time. They see the conference title game, lost, and then cool, you lost in overtime. But again, I think that's how I look at it. But I cannot wait to see what my guys got to say about this
one. So I do believe, of course, Georgia and Michigan, they got those right. I will even, it's tough, man. It could, because like I mentioned earlier, the committee has this thing where they switch. 1 year is most deserving. The next year is the best team. 1 year, we love conference champions. The next year is something else. I think we all just want some transparency as to what goes on with this process that I doubt we'll ever get. However, the thing with Ohio State is, and why I'm okay with Ohio State being in, is because they play arguably the top team in the country. I mean, if you want to say Michigan is the best team in the country, if you want to say Georgia is the best team in the country, I think both of those teams will be favored over Ohio State on a neutral site. But hey, if you get beat like that at home against one of the two top teams, I can't really say much. But then again, they struggled. You know, they didn't have a prototypical easy stretch throughout the Big Ten this year. They struggled. There was a couple games that was too close for comfort. They escaped against Maryland and Talia Tagovailoa. They struggled against him. He lit them up. Him and Raheem Jarrett, former LSU guy that they wanted to go to LSU. He's a Louisiana boy. Their receiving corps and what Mike Locksley has built at Maryland, former Alabama OC, they're creating something. I hope they take that next step soon because it would be nice to see some competition with Wisconsin taking a step back in the Big Ten. And, you know, Nebraska got a new head coach. Maybe they'll step up. But we need to see some more competition in the Big Ten. But nonetheless, as a conversation for another day, with TCU, do I think they're more deserving or one of the top 4 teams? I don't think they're a top 4 team. However, I think they're more deserving than Alabama. And here's why. As much as this pains me to say, if you're an Alabama fan, sometimes we get in this bubble where we want to compare past Alabama teams to the current team that we're watching. It's no surprise. It's not surprising that if you put this team against any other Alabama team that Saban has had absent the first year when they went 7-6, I'm quite confident those teams would have beat this team by at least 7 points. I truly believe that. This team all year, and I don't know whether it was the introduction of NIL, where you got players making more money than other players, and they're like, well, he's got this, and he's getting special treatment. I don't know. Not every team has to deal with a player or two or several players making $2 or $3 million. And I'm happy. I'm a proponent of players getting paid. When I was an athlete in college, I wish I was in this era so I can get paid. But I think right now, Alabama was impacted not only because of poor coaching at times, but also NIL. I think that TCU was more deserving because Alabama had opportunity. It's unquestionable that a competent defensive coordinator during the Tennessee game would not continue to put his safety that runs maybe a 4.6 on a player like Jalen Hyatt that runs a 4.2, maybe faster than that. I'm not a defensive coordinator, and the defense coordinator for Alabama, their coaches, they have lost more football knowledge than I'll ever know. However, it does not take a rocket scientist to know that you cannot continue to put players in bad positions to perform. So I put that whole game on coaching. The LSU game, it happens. LSU in that environment, I don't know if anybody's ever been in Death Valley. It is very hectic to play in. There was reports coming out early in the season that Nick Saban said that he had, in past Alabama teams, they were chanting during pregame going out to the game. They were like hooping and hollering, jumping up and around. They were pumped up. They were ready to go. And before the Tennessee game and LSU game, they were quiet. And he asked them, "What's going on? Why y'all not chanting?" And he put it to mental health, mental illness, that some players are dealing with like anxiety, which is a form of mental illness. And you never heard that before, especially with the Alabama team. Like they just had it mentally. But I think that's the era we live in. When you have, I talked about it earlier, with Georgia expectations, Alabama with expectations. They're just a year away removed from SEC champions playing in the national championship game. They fell short. There's been too many Alabama teams that have gone multiple years. At this point in the juncture, at the LSU game, they've already lost the game. Think about that pressure on their shoulders, knowing they lose one more game. This will be the second year in a row that Alabama will not be national champions. And I think it got to them. But you have to give credence to TCU. They've been in close games, just as many close games as Alabama, but they won. Yes, they lost their final game of the season, but they took care of business during the season, during the regular season. I don't think if you put them on a neutral site game with Alabama, I think it'll be a closer game than expected, but I think Alabama will pull the game out. But I think that if you want to get into the brain of the committee, I think they went with most deserving, and I do believe that TCU is probably more deserving than Alabama this year. Alabama just wasn't dominant. To Nate's point about the LSU game, if I go back even further, if Alabama had been dominant against the likes of Austin Peay, who is not even a Division I team, they won 34-0. Defense played well, but offense wasn't even good that game. Only scored 34 points. If you had dominated Texas A&M, yes, they beat LSU, but you're supposed to be on a level higher than LSU this year because they just hired a brand new coach, Brian Kelly. They only had like 42 scholarship players this year. They were playing shorthanded. So Alabama wasn't dominant. If in prior seasons, Alabama got the benefit of the doubt because of their dominance. The year they lost to Auburn in the final game, the Iron Bowl, they got in despite not playing in the SEC championship because of their dominance. This Alabama team beat Texas A&M, a team that's not even bowl eligible, by 4 points. They just wasn't dominant this year, which is why, as much as it pains me, I will say that the committee got it right. Do I agree with everything? Their criteria? No. But if they're going to say the most deserving teams, then yes, TCU is more deserving than Alabama this year. But they're going to go with the best 4 teams, then they got it wrong. I think to answer your question, Nate, I guess it depends on what criteria are they harping on this year, because it changes from week to week, in my opinion, definitely from year to year. But if they're going by most deserving, then yes, TCU belonged in the playoffs.
I agree with what both you guys said. Dang, man, Mike just made me have a whole heart change on this channel. Oh my God, because I was about to go in. I was about to say, no, TCU does not deserve to be in this playoff. They do not deserve to be in this playoff. Everybody that lost that was ranked dropped except them. It's a travesty. But if you just really look at every last detail, I would say this: Georgia and Michigan, they got that perfectly. Those are the top 2 teams in the country. The committee got that right. Even though to me per se, I feel like Ohio State's 22-point loss to Michigan at home was worse than our 4 points combined on the road. They deserve to get in. They only got 1 loss. TCU, even though they lost to Kansas State in their conference championship game, they only had 1 loss. They deserve to get in. But to me personally, the 4 best teams in the playoff in the country: Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, us. That's how I look at it. Just look at the talent, look at the history, look at the ratings it will produce. You got Georgia and Alabama potentially in the semifinals. Then you got Ohio State, Michigan, and the other semifinals, and that would have produced ratings. But I have to lean more towards what Mike said. And it pains me to say too, TCU deserves to get in the playoff than we did. This year was more about discipline. I doing that game versus Tennessee, I believe we had 16, 17 penalties, which is the most in the Saban era. And to me, I felt like, okay, this is more than a talent issue. This is a discipline issue. And I feel like at some point, Nick Saban lost his grip on this team. And to me, I feel like in order for us to get back to playing dominant Alabama football like I know we can, he's going to have to reclaim that vigor. He's going to have to put his hands back into that culture, because I feel like, it could be like Mike was leaning more towards, he was saying the NIL deals, the talent that's coming in. Somewhere down the line, a culture changed from us being this dominant football team, because if you even go back to all the previous years that we was dominant, we walked on the field. You knew when you seen that Chrism and White walking onto the field, you already knew they was gonna win that game. Like we was walking in with that certain swagger, that certain confidence that say no matter what the other team does, once we stomp y'all on the ground, y'all not getting back up. And in the past 2 years, I have not seen that. I didn't see it. I didn't see it last year. I didn't see it this year. And for some reason, whether it be coaching staff, and I do feel like we need to really fire Pete Golden and Bill O'Brien. Like they been need to go like yesterday. That's my opinion. Something's got to change. It's got to be a shaking that's going on with the Alabama football team. But I feel like Saban really has to put his hands back on the blueprint. He has to really, get back to creating the culture that he once had in Alabama, where where everybody was glued in. Because I feel like within these past 2 years or so, I feel like everybody's just playing for themselves. They're not really playing as a team. And you're not gonna win no games like that. And you seen it this year, games that we didn't even have no business struggling in. The first game versus Texas, there's no way in the world Texas, we shouldn't have beaten Texas by 1 point. There's no way. And I'm not saying Texas is no slouch or FCS team or anything like that, but like come on. Talent-wise, we have the better talent than Texas. And we only beat them by 1 point. And then Tennessee, we get it. Tennessee was one of the best top 10 teams in the country at that point. But 17 penalties in one game, I feel like we didn't really make a case for ourselves for us to really be in a college football playoff this year. And like Nate was saying, even though we had those close losses, when those teams that beat us got blown out by teams that was better, that was way less better than them, that hurt us. You seen Tennessee get beat down by South Carolina. That should not have happened. Now they make us look bad because the committee is looking at it. Okay, wow, Tennessee just got beat down by South Carolina. South Carolina is not better than Tennessee. So in their eyes, it's like, okay, that was a bad loss on us. Because I feel like if Tennessee would have beaten South Carolina, then that loss wouldn't have looked that bad. Same thing with LSU. Like you said earlier, Nate, with the loss to Texas A&M. Texas A&M, we just beat Texas A&M by 4 points. But then they come around and beat LSU. They got blown out they blew LSU out. So the LSU loss looks bad on us. I feel like if we would have went out, and I say this every year, and I don't know why we do it, but we have got to stop playing down to the competition. We have got to stop acting as like we're going to go in there and I'm not saying we should be I'm not saying we should not be confident. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when you're coming against a team, you always supposed to come in there as if they can beat you. And it just seems like in certain games this year, we just came in with the mentality that, oh, we're Alabama, we're better than you, and all this type of stuff. And we either lost or we was in close games. So I feel like when it comes to that, TCU definitely deserved to get in than we did. Ohio State, even though they lost by 22 points at home, they still had one loss. They took care of their business at the most part of the season. So they deserve to get in more than us. Us, we did not take care of business this year. And it just goes to show us that, okay, from here on out, we cannot put our faith in the committee's hands. Because like Mike said, their criteria switches every year. It seems like it's every year. First is strength of schedule, then is margin of victory, then is versus ranked opponents and all this stuff. And it's like, what's going to be your criteria? What is going to be the bottom line? Okay, we're going by this criteria and it's not going to change. But it just seems like it's just a concoction of Alabama fatigue, Ohio State fatigue, or we have to put in one-loss teams. Like oh, it don't matter about conference championship. At one point, it did matter about conference championships. Last time I checked, TCU did not win that conference championship. But now we just gonna gloss that. So to other teams, they're gonna be like, oh, we ain't gotta win our conference championship. We good. No, we just gonna get in. I mean, what kind of precedents is the committee gonna set? So like I said, Michigan, Georgia, they got that right. I feel like Georgia's been the most consistent team all year. They went undefeated. They handled their business. Michigan did as well. They handled their business. They got those two teams right. Ohio State, I get it. They're a one-loss team. TCU, I'm gonna be honest, I still got questions about that because I'm like, everybody dropped when they lost, except y'all. I'm like, why did y'all not drop? That's my question. It's like y'all, everybody that was ranked lost except y'all. Y'all stay in y'all place. So that's my only question. But other than that, I feel like even though I feel like we're one of the best four teams in the country, you know, because of circumstances, TCU deserved to be in before us. So, like Mike was saying, I just wanted to be a more consistent criteria with the committee. The committee has to do better in explaining to the people what the criteria is. It can't be no bias in there. It can't be no opinions. It has to be straight facts. Okay, well, who is the best? Who is the is if it's gonna be the four best teams? Okay, who we're going to put the best four teams in the playoff, regardless of record, regardless if they won a championship or not. If that's going to be the criteria, if margin of victory is going, whatever your criteria is, just make sure that that's your selection. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, I agree with both things that y'all said, and that leads into the next thing that we're going to talk about on here, guys. If for everyone that's tuned in, I'm sure you all have heard is commit that the Rose Bowl agreed to expand to 12 teams for starting the 2024 season. Just to give y'all guys kind of a rundown, of the expanded plus will begin the weekend of December 21st, meaning that the teams between 5 to 12 will be either at the home field of the higher seeded team or at another site designated by the higher seed institution. Those game dates will be determined once we get to that season. But for at least the 24 and 25 seasons, the 4 quarterfinal games and the 2 semifinal games will be played in the rotation bowls, like how the New Year's bowls go. So there will be the Fiesta, the Peach, the Rose, and the Sugar Bowl. The Cotton and Orange Bowl will host the semifinals. Atlanta's hosting the national title game in 2025. And in 2026, Miami will be hosting the national title game as well. The 12-team format, I'm going to go ahead and get this out the way before my guys jump on it. I don't want to hear no excuses at this point. Me personally, it should have been 8 teams. I think 12 is too many. That's my personal opinion, because to me, when you're getting 12, I'm going to go ahead and throw them out here. This is no jab at this squad because they were good this year. Tulane would have been in the college football playoffs if the 12-team format was today. Would they have matched up with Alabama? Absolutely. That would have been Bama by 50. But this is the situation that you're going to get into when you're going to a 12-team format. And they would have played at Tuscaloosa. All you would have told that team is fixing Jesus, because they would have lost by stepping on the field. The game would have been over when they stepped on the tunnel at Tuscaloosa. This is what you're going to be dealing with now, though. So because you saying it's no debate, 12 teams have an opportunity. This is going to be an intriguing thing from a perspective of, can somebody get on a Cinderella run? But it's going to be a little tougher. It's going to be a little bit harder said than done, because once again, will number 12 be able to go in there and beat the team that barely missed the bye week? Who knows? The 5th best team in the country, like I said, look at the rankings now. Is Bama are they gonna beat a number 5 Alabama? Absolutely not. So that's the situation that you're gonna get into when you start the 12-team format. Now, it should drop the conversation so much of who's deserving because the 12 best teams will be in there. Then I think that's the first year that Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC. I think before we get to that format, the Big Ten really needs to balance it where Michigan, Ohio State don't have to, the loser of that game don't have to sit here and avoid going to the conference title game because you lost. Because to be honest, that whole division with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan is stacked. Then on the other side, you win against freaking Purdue. We knew that. You know whoever wins Ohio State, Michigan game is going to win the Big Ten. You don't even give an opportunity to take on a tough matchup. Now, I know a lot of folks may say, oh, well, Georgia, we knew we were going to whoop LSU. But there's been plenty of times where Bama and Georgia was the national championship matchup during the BCS days. There were plenty of times where loser of Georgia LSU, Georgia Bama, Florida LSU, whoever lost those games was going to miss the whole thing. So to me, if you're going to put an importance on conference title games, you got to balance that out too. But honestly, I would have went 8 teams. I would not have went 12 because I feel like somebody's going to get in that don't deserve it. Or let me put this out here that all you guys love the SEC. Now, if there are 6 SEC teams, I don't want to hear nothing. I don't hear a complaint. If those are 6 of the 12 best teams in the country, then they deserve to be there. And that's what's going to end up happening. So if you see a Georgia, Bama, LSU, Florida, Auburn, and a Tennessee in the top 12, I do not want to hear it. Because guess what? Y'all wanted 12 so bad, right? Right? For all of y'all that wanted more teams, I feel like it should have been 8. Because to be with 8 teams, you got more of a favorable few. You know your top 8 are literally your top 8 in the country. Now, somebody that's going to probably be 7-4 going to probably have the number 12 overall ranking. Florida State would have probably went up against a Tennessee with a Hendon Hooker this year. That would have been a bumping also. So that's what I say on the 12 teams. I'm going to pass over those guys. What do y'all think about the committee expanding it to 12 teams in 2024?
I'm with you, Nate. I feel like it should have been 8. I feel like since day one, having 4 teams was completely stupid. It was idiotic. It really set the committee back a few years. I don't understand who even came up with that concept of having 4 teams in a college football playoff. Just looking at the NFL, the NBA, are those playoffs 4 teams? No, because I feel like you will have more of a competitive playoff if you'll do at least 8. 12, I'm with you. 12 is too much because people gonna say, oh, you have 12 teams, gonna be more competitive. No, it's not. You're gonna have 2 or 3 blowout games in the playoff than what you have now. Yeah, because like you said, if that 12-team playoff was in effect right now, TCU will be playing us. And we already know we will mop the field with Tulane. We can mop the field with Tulane with Jalen Moreau or Ty Simpson. That's how I feel about it. So you're going to have a few games like that when we go 12. And like you said, Nate, I don't want to hear any complaints. I don't want to hear no favorites. Oh, they favor SEC. They favor Alabama. I don't want to hear none of that. Y'all ask for 12 teams, you getting 12 teams. So if you're number 12 and you have to face number 5 and you end up facing a team that's way better than you end up getting blown out by 40 points. Hey, you asked for it. So just like Nate, I felt like 8 would have been more of a competitive playoff because with your top 5, you'll have your Power 5 conference champions, which will be the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, Pac-12, or the Big 12. You'll have all those champions in that 1 to 5, and then you'll have your 3, 1 to 2 loss best teams right there, seeing that 6 to 8. But 12, I just feel like it's gonna be. I feel like it's gonna be more complaints now than I feel like it's gonna be more complaints then than now because you're going to see more blowout games. You're going to see more teams that quote unquote deserve to be there. But in essence, uh, yeah, yeah, I feel like it's gonna be more blowout games than what we see now. But like Nate said, come 2024, I don't want to hear any complaints because now you ask for this even playing field, this quote unquote even playing field. Now you about to see what it really is to play with the big boys. So that's all I got to say about that. I'm gonna turn over the mic.
It's interesting, guys, because people always have these complaints, but they don't really have solutions outside of expanding the playoff. Look at this, guys. The top 6 teams this year were Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Alabama, Tennessee. So if you would have added 2 teams to 6, in most years, you probably would have had arguments. As well as if you expanded. So last year, you had Oklahoma State and Notre Dame at 7 and 8. They had an argument to get in. You can go back to the entire history of the college football playoff, and if you want to expand it to 6 teams, you had teams on the outside looking in that had an argument. Same thing. You have 8 teams. I guarantee you, if you expanded to 8 teams, those same you would have had arguments. So, like, if we continue down this road, you have people that enjoy the experience of March Madness. It used to be 64. I think it's more now with like playing games and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect to basketball, because basketball is a very physical. It can be a very physical and it's very tasking on the body. Because if you've seen basketball players that play overseas or even professional NBA players, when they get to like 35, basketball players have a certain walk. And it's because of their hips, their knees, their ankles, because of running up and down that hardwood floor. But football is a different beast as far as the physicality and the tasking that your body is tasked with on a week in, week out basis. So we can't have what we have in basketball. With this, you can't please everybody. I think the committee, what they should have did was they should have stood firm on a number, and they should have just, look, this is what we are, this is what we have, this is what we're going to do. And if you don't like it, then so be it. Because let's say we would have went to 8 teams this year. I know both of you were saying y'all agreed on the 8 teams, and I agree on that as well. But guess what? What about this? Because on the last segment, we talked about what is the committee? What is your criteria? Is it the most deserving? Is it conference champion? Is it strength of schedule? Look at this. Top 8 teams would have been, you would have had Clemson and Utah 7 and 8. But guess what? Okay, Utah is cool, but guess what? Kansas State won their conference championship. They're 9. So would you, if that was your criteria and we had 8 teams this year, would you have put Kansas State in the top 8 this year? If that's the case, then it's kind of hypocritical because you didn't have them in the top 8 this year when we only had 4 teams. So I think the committee, it's human nature that we're all flawed in some areas, and I think the committee is definitely flawed, and I don't think it's going to get better, and I think you're going to have more instances like this. One of these days, I know you mentioned this earlier, we know Purdue didn't have a chance against Ohio State or Michigan, whoever they had to play, but let's just say they did win. Purdue they didn't even finish ranked this year. They didn't finish ranked. When they lost that game, knocked them out of the rankings. But let's just say, for play God's advocate, let's say Purdue was 19th going into the Big Ten championship. Let's say by some miraculous miracle, they put it all together and they beat Michigan. If you're basing your criteria on strength of schedule, and let's say they play Michigan and Ohio State, they're going to have a high strength of schedule. Let's say you like conference champions. How do you rationalize moving a Purdue that was ranked 19th going into championship weekend and moving them all the way into the top 8 or even top 10 because they're at 19? So it's a very flawed system, and the NCAA is in some murky waters right now. I know you two have noticed that they hired a new president. He's going to be moving into that role in the next new year.
Mm-hmm.
And with like conferences, and the conferences have been battling with NCAA for a while now, and there have been some rumors and some whispers that maybe the conferences would go ahead and do their own thing and move out of the NCAA. We don't know what the future holds, but I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't really understand what a perfect solution would be, because you're always going to have an argument. You're always going to have somebody that's upset. You're always going to have somebody, well, this team should have got in. This team went undefeated with their starting quarterback. And in the 2 games they lost the top 10 teams, but they lost by 21 points each. And they're not in the top 8 or the top 10 or the top 12. You know, you've opened a Pandora's box, because I guarantee you when they move to 12 teams within 4 years, there's going to be an outcry about expanding the playoffs once again. I will bet every penny I have in the bank, there's going to be an outcry that we should expand again. And then expand again. Where does it stop? You know, I don't have the answer. That's why I'm not employed to make those decisions. But what I do know is continuing to expand every 4 or 5 years is not the answer. But I definitely agree with the points you two made. I think 8 was a solid number. I think before this year, I said even 10, because I forgot the layout I had, but it was going to give the the Power 5 conference that had, or it might have been every conference champion gets in, and then you had like 2 at-large bids. It was something to that effect. But I don't know, guys. I just think that they've opened a Pandora's box that's not going to be able to be shut. But I do agree with the points that you two made. I think 8 would have been enough. But hey, what I can tell you is it's going to have a drastic impact on players opting out. You've already seen players opt out of the college football playoff this year. Some due to injury, but guess what? I think some of those players are healthy enough to play, but they're not healthy enough in their mind to be like, do I want to risk my NFL career? You know, my potential NFL career. I'm a projected first round pick, and I haven't been 100% the entire year, and I may be 90% for the college football playoff. Do I want to risk this? You know, you saw what happened to Jalen Smith, the former Notre Dame middle linebacker, was a projected top 5 pick, got hurt in the bowl game. And I know injuries happen. That's part of the game. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to have opt-outs kind of influence the college football playoffs in the future, as well as expanding the playoffs will devalue the regular season. If a team like Alabama is buzzsawing the entire season, and they don't have anything to play for, or anybody else for that matter, they don't have anything to play for by playing in their conference championship, why play? USC got penalized for playing in their conference championship. Had they won, they'd be in. Had they not played, if they didn't have to play that game, they'd be in. So how are you going to reward these teams that are being forced, that are on the bubble, on the cusp of that 12 team, or for this year, 4 teams? You're making them play in the conference championship. They have nothing to gain. They have everything to lose. So you're going to devalue conference championships, and you're going to devalue the regular season, because, hey, why am I going to play injured when we can lose a game, maybe even 2, and still get in? I think college football is at a crossroads right now, and I think unless they find a way to kind of reel this back in, same thing with NIL, unless they can reel this back in, I think we're going to see some drastic changes in college football, and not for the better.
Man, I loved exactly the points that y'all made. But hey, is there anything else y'all want to cover college football wise, or did we hit everything? How y'all feeling? Did we hit everything?
One more thing I'd like to add. I know this is not an Alabama show. This is a college football playoff preview. But one thing that is important to the point of what we're talking about, Jalen Hyatt, the standout for Tennessee, he asked the difference after the Georgia game between Alabama and Alabama and Georgia, and he said that it was a physicality. And that hurt me more than the losses, because when you look at Alabama, you think of a team that's physical, that's going to punch you in the mouth. They're not afraid. And the other team, like Nate said earlier, that when you step on the field, you kind of nervous. You're like, I believe in my abilities, but I don't know if we can beat these boys. Opposing teams didn't have that this year. They have that in Georgia now. teams fear Georgia before they even walk on the field. They know that, I don't know, like we're gonna give it our all, we're gonna give it to God. But in the back of my head, that Jalen Carter, that's a big old boy. I gotta go up against him for 70 snaps. And Alabama's got to find that again. And that's one of the reasons why I think Georgia and Michigan, they're headed to a rematch, because they look like the two most physical teams in college football to me. And guess what? It's not surprising they're number one and number two. So, I just wanted to point that out, that was a pretty damning comment by Jalen Hyatt, to say that the difference between Alabama and Georgia was the physicality. And I think that speaks to what Nick Saban needs to address this upcoming offseason.
By the way, Mike, he also stated that if they rematched with Georgia, that they wouldn't beat us. I'd like to see that, Jalen Hyatt. Oh, my bad. You forgot you declared for the draft. You lucky. Let me put this out here for any Tennessee fan that's watching. You lost 27-13. It should have been at least a 30-point blowout. The only thing the reason why that game wasn't a blowout is because it started raining. Georgia took it easy. Don't forget that, Tennessee. You were the flawed number one. And like I said, go take that goalpost back to the stadium and help them out, because you took it out for nothing. You darn framps. Anything else y'all want to get? Just had to get out, get out of the way from Rocky Top. That's it.
Right. You gonna have that one team that thinks that they're the it now, and they really, you have to put them back in their place. Be like, okay, little brother, sit down somewhere. You just getting here now, because we seen what Tennessee did when they was number one for that 1 week. We seen what they did. But along the lines what Mike said, this is not an Alabama show. But as an Alabama fan, I just want to say to the people that's always saying whenever we have down years, oh, the dynasty is over. Look, the fact that we was even in the conversation with 2 losses to get in the National Conference Championship should tell you that the dynasty is not over. To an extent, we do still have an intimidation factor off the field. Now we just have to regain that factor on the field, because like I said earlier, there was a point where when you seen Alabama walk on that field, when Nick Saban leading the charge, you knew that you was going to get blowout. You was going to get a beat down that day. And this year we didn't put that fear into teams. When teams saw, they said, oh, that team can be had. And as an Alabama fan, that hurts. That hurts, because we're not used to experiencing many down years. I became an Alabama fan in the years with Defoe and not Defoe, Dubois and with Dubose and Mike Shula. There was some, you want to see some down years? Those were some down years. Before Nick Saban came into town, we was in football hell. I'm just saying it like that. We was in football hell. When Nick Saban came in there and changed that whole culture around, that's when things begin to change. He just came in there, he just flipped, he just turned things around. He built that culture, but I've seen over time that culture has begun to morph into something that I don't like. I don't see the dominant Alabama football team that I used to see, that consistency, us living up to expectations. And I just want to say that we're not exempt to having a down year. We're not exempt to having down years. Every team, every dynasty has their down years. Look at the Chicago Bulls. They had their little moments of Ryan in the, winning championships, and eventually, I mean, you look at them now. Are they winning championships? No, they've had down years. You look at the New England Patriots when they was on top. They've had down years. Look at the Golden State Warriors. They having down years now. So it's okay for Alabama It's okay for us to have a down year, and I just want to speak to every Alabama fan out there. Just chill out. Chill out. We're going to be back. Just because we don't win it every year, that doesn't mean that, oh, the dynasty's over and all this stuff, and Nick Saban about to retire. No, that's not what that means. We just need to chill out, stop acting spoiled. We've been on the mountaintop for so long. Other teams are starting to catch up, and that's good. That's good for college football. You don't want to have just one team dominating all the time. Like I used to see it with the New England Patriots. I hate it. Every time New England Patriots went to the Super Bowl, you already knew. More times than not, they was going to win. I hated seeing them going to the Super Bowl year after year. But I had to realize down the road they was going to have a down year, and that's okay. It's okay for teams to have down years, because in those down years, you get to retool and reevaluate. Okay, these are the areas that we need to improve in. These are the areas where we can do better in. And I feel like there needs to be some healthy changes to the coaching staff. And I'm going to say it again. Pete Golden, Bill O'Brien needs to be gone like yesterday. That would be an amazing change for me personally, because Bill O'Brien did not do that offense no justice this year. No justice. And I want to see Bryce Young win a championship as a starter. Unfortunately, I might not see that, because as much as I want him to come back, why would he want to come back to this offense, to this a horrors play calling? I wouldn't want to come back. Will Anderson, why would he want to come back? That the coaching staff did not put us in a position to win this year. I could have came up with better play caller than what I've seen on the field this year. I'm just speaking personally, but I do feel like it's shaking up as far as the college football playoff goes. I do feel like it's shaking up to be Georgia and Michigan again in the national championship. And like I said, and like I predicted, Georgia is going to repeat. Right now, Georgia is the most physical team in the college football playoff right now. Michigan, they're up there. Michigan is up there. I just feel like from a physicality standpoint, in all three phases of the football, Georgia is the most physical team that's out there right now. And good luck TCU, but you're not getting far.
All right, guys. I think that we hit everything. So before we get out of here, man, y'all got anything to say real quick? I'm gonna say this though. I appreciate all y'all that's been tuned in. Man, this was fun. We got a chance to talk college football. And this is something we never get a chance to do. And we had a lot of comments too. We had a lot of folks, especially when we talk about Ohio State. Good Lord, we were lit up about Ohio State. But no, it's no disrespect to Ohio State. I'm excited about the playoffs. I think this is gonna be one of the top three matches we've had in a while. Other than, of course, the LSU and Alabama matches. I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to look like against Ohio State. I'm looking forward to the college football playoffs. And as a Georgia fan, hey, if we can repeat, I'm just going to be the happiest man in the world. Like, it was cool seeing us win one, but if we can find a way to repeat, it's going to be pretty awesome, because I see a lot of people keep screaming Georgia's the next Alabama, Georgia's the dynasty. I'm not putting that dynasty title on us until we win more titles. To me, one is good, but when I look at dynasties, Clemson won 2. Bama's won 6, I believe, or 7, if I'm not mistaken. 6 or 7 under Saban. I want to see multiple titles. Last year was an exciting one, but to me, if you're going to establish yourself as one of the premier team in the country, you have to repeat this year. And that's just where I look at it for UGA. But that's all I have to say, really. Mike and Dunn, what you guys have to say before we get out of here?
Oh man, I had a blast tonight, man. I know we've been away from the live for a while, man, and it's like, it just seems so surreal to be back behind the mic. I was so excited, when I told Nate I wanted to do a sports podcast and wanted to do a sports episode on the college football playoff and all that, and he was like, "Man, I'm in." I'm like, "I'm in too." So it was fun, man. It was fun. Hooking it up with Mike. Met this brother for the first time tonight. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to the next one with you, man. I had fun with you guys tonight. I enjoyed the comments. I enjoyed the just the accusation of Ohio State hate. Like I said, it's no hate towards Ohio State. I'm just giving my honest opinion. You can agree or disagree with it. That's what we do on here. So I had a blast tonight, man. I had a real blast tonight, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm looking forward to some exciting games on doing these college football playoffs. And I feel like the committee was trolling us when they decided to give us Kansas State in the bowl game. So it's gonna be fun beating up on the Wildcats. I'm keeping my eyes and ears open to see what Bryson and Will going to do. I know they're going to play in the bowl game. Nick Saban said he hasn't heard anything as far as them stand or they're going to forego their senior season to come back. I haven't heard anything about that. So I guess we'll keep our eyes and ears open to see what's going to happen down there at T-Town. But I had a blast tonight, man. I enjoyed both of you guys on tonight, and I enjoyed the audience as well.
Man, I enjoyed you two fellas. Like I said, to open up the show, I really appreciate you guys allow me into your space. This is a platform that you two created, and y'all done a really solid job. Like I said, I watched from afar, and I'm very impressed. So I'm thankful. I'm grateful that y'all showed grace by allowing me to be on this platform today. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. We had a lot of comments, and we've had some people that stayed on the show for at least 95% of the time tonight. And I'm thankful for you guys' audience. I can't wait to share this with my people so they can come and support the page and everything. But again, thank you for the opportunity. I don't take that lightly because you don't have to do that. I mean, y'all could have had anybody on here that you wanted to, or you could have just kept it to yourself. But you opened the platform to me, and thank you.
Thank you, man. Blessed us too.
One thing, last thing, and then we're gonna cut it for me. Everyone, if you are on YouTube, and of course we want you to subscribe to our the KingPins podcast, our personal Facebooks. Please make sure that you subscribe to Mike's YouTube, which is the Unbiased Truth. He's gonna be dropping some stuff in the future. Please subscribe to this man. He's a very solid guy. You've seen him on here now. You've seen him talk Falcons a couple of times, so you're not gonna stop seeing this guy. So go ahead and subscribe to him. But with that being said, everyone, y'all have a good Monday night. Let's get ready to watch this terrible Monday night football game between the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. So bad. Good Lord.
Hey, you said, are you too? You said the Unbiased Truth, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Is that the Unbiased Truth 6566?
I'd be lying if I let me.
Hey, we're gonna make sure you officially can give it to y'all real quick. Let me check real quick so I can let them know before we jump off. Let me make sure.
It is the no, it just says what I'm looking at. It's just the Unbiased Truth 6566. Like you said, probably need to change that. I'm gonna keep it there for right now, just so y'all can come in and follow.
Okay.
Yes, that is the page.
Okay,
that's a lottery number, by the way. All right, guys. With that being said, y'all have a good night, and hey, until next time, this is Nate, Don, the Kingpin, and Mike. Hey, have a good night. Oh, happy holidays, by the way.
Right, happy holidays.